Meantime, President Trump on his first official visit to India. He and the First Lady taking a stroll through the grounds of the country's most famous landmark, the Taj Mahal.
After the president spoke at a massive rally with the Prime Minister of India at a cricket stadium that holds up to 110,000 people. Hogan Gidley is Principal Deputy White House Press Secretary. He is our headliner this morning. He joins us from the North Lawn. Hogan, good morning and welcome to the program.
Good morning. Thanks so much for having me.
Good morning. So how would you describe the president's reception there in India for this whirlwind trip?
Electric. I woke up to seeing some of these images and I couldn't believe it. Now, I should be able to understand and know this was going to happen, considering I've been to enough rallies at this point and seen tens of thousands of people filling arenas for this president, tens of thousands outside wanting to get in. What's so amazing here is this president can go overseas, pull 125 million people in the world's largest cricket stadium. Democrats can't pull 125 in a convention center in South Carolina. So the juxtaposition of the two groups here are very stark when you see what this president's been able to do. And a lot of people in India appreciate what the president's been able to do, quite frankly, because of the relationship he's developed with Prime Minister Modi. They have a strong bond. They're working to expand energy partnerships and exports and imports between the two countries, but also working on a safe and secure Indo-Pacific as well. They want it to be free and open. It's going to continue to be that way as long as the president, Donald Trump, remains in the White House. And look, again, expansion and imports and exports is where this partnership and relationship is heading. I mean, it's up 500% under this administration, $7 billion increase in those energy explorations. But we want more. And the president is good at making these deals. He's good at building partnerships and relationships. He's done it with Japan. He's done it with South Korea. He's done it with China, all in historic fashion. The USMCA is another one. And so we expect even more with India in the future.
Hogan, on the eve of this trip, as you know, the president was expressing frustration about House Democrats going after him again on the question of Russian interference in elections. Joe Biden out on the campaign trail. Here's what he said.
The president denies they're involved. They've been involved. Except when the president stands before the whole world, looks at Vladimir Putin and says, why would he want to interfere in our elections? Well, 17 intelligence agencies told them he did. This is continuing. And what's happened? Why in God's name haven't we hardened the electoral process?
This started out with reports suggesting that Vladimir Putin was essentially rooting for President Trump to win re-election. Then we learned more about this intelligence briefing, though, well, hold on a second. The Kremlin may be involved in Bernie Sanders and pushing him here to cause more chaos. And we're also hearing from our chief White House correspondent, John Roberts, that initial intel briefing about the president may have been overstating the intelligence. What do you know at this hour?
This is a joke. It's another Russian witch hunt hoax. It started when this president took over in the White House, and it continues today. They cannot get past themselves on these Russian lies. Let's go past the fact for a moment. I don't know how many times journalists have to get leaks from Adam Schiff or his staffers that are completely false and proven to be a lie before they just start discounting everything he says. It's absolutely incredible to watch what they're trying to do to this president. And all of these shadowy sources, they're all behind the scenes. They never see the light of day, and reporters use them and run with them as if they are true when they are not. And this administration put two people on the record about these briefings this weekend, both Mark Short at the vice president's office, but also our NSA, Robert O'Brien. And they said these things didn't even happen. So we have the guts to come out and say these things publicly, but Democrats continue to do those selective leaks like they did with Kavanaugh, like they did with impeachment, time and time again. They're trying to manipulate the system, hurt this president, and the media, sadly, is complicit and compliant with everything these Democrats are trying to do. It's hurtful, not to this president. It's hurtful to the American people. We have been tougher on Russia than any administration in history. We have expelled so many of their diplomats. We've shut down their facilities in this country. We've sanctioned their oligarchs. We put a whole of government approach in effect with the DHS, FBI, the first time this has ever happened, to work with states. We're running tests to ensure that these elections are done properly and that every vote matters and that every vote counts, and we're going to continue to do that. It was Barack Obama who turned a blind eye to Russia and its interference.
Two quick topics left, because we also want to ask you about the coronavirus and how the United States is responding to that. But first, this new report, it's out of Axios now. The Hill's also reporting on it, citing the Axios report. that Trump allies are assembling lists of officials considered disloyal to the president, and they're finding pro-Trump replacements for them. Is there truth to that reporting, Hogan?
Well, the president's been pretty clear about the fact that he wants people in this administration who want to forward his agenda. Donald Trump was the only one elected. He was the only one that the American people voted for. They didn't vote for someone at any of these other agencies, any of these other departments. And time again, we see in the media reports from people in the bowels of the federal government working against this president. I get brought quotes every day by journalists who say, we're going to write a story about this person saying the president's doing wrong here, or the president's not doing enough there. They're pushing their own selfish political agenda and not the agenda of the duly elected president. Every president, this one included, has the right to have people in positions that forward and execute his agenda.
So there's truth to the fact that there are lists being assembled. This report says that this has been going on since 2018.
Well, look, if there are any lists, I've not seen them. But the fact is, we know there are people actively working against this president. And because Donald Trump won, we got to see, for example, the famous text messages from Lisa Page and Peter Strzok working actively against him. I mean, that shouldn't happen. It shouldn't happen to any sitting president, as Donald Trump always says. And so we're going to continue to move forward to make sure people are in positions that support this president's agenda. And that's just logical.
Are there plans to actively fire any of those people on the lists, Hogan?
Well, again, it's not a secret that we want people in positions that work with this president, not against him. And too often we have people in this government. I mean, the federal government's massive with millions of people, and there are a lot of folks out there working against this president. If we find them, we'll take appropriate action.
Hogan, we got 30 seconds. You see the markets taking a big hit today because of coronavirus fears. What is the White House going to be asking Congress for in terms of emergency funding?
Well, we need some funding here to make sure that we protect all Americans, that we keep us safe, we keep us well. And this president was out in front of this, took a fully aggressive approach, putting together the coronavirus task force led up by NSA O'Brien, also by Secretary Azar as well. We have to protect the American people. That's why we took steps to ensure that people coming from those regions into this country are funneled into specific airports that can handle, that have the bandwidth to handle and screen people properly.
Between $3 to $5 billion in emergency funding, real quick.
I'm sorry?
$3 to $5 billion in emergency funding. Is that what we're hearing?
Well, I don't have an announcement on the specific amount yet, but we need to combat this. We need to make sure our people are safe, and the president's always going to take action to do that.
Thank you very much. Hogan Gidley, live at the White House. Thank you.